Now, this week it was my turn, and I was wanted to do something which has been on my sort of thoughts for quite a while, and that is being able to finish well. Um, I wrote a blog post, which, well, again, I'll put a link on the show notes. But I basically talked about the fact that the first 3 years of doing ultras, I improved each year from the age of 48 up to 50. Each year, particularly the West Highland Way, I got faster and faster. And then I had a couple of years where things got really hard. I started to struggle over the last 10, 15 miles. I did a West Highland Way that took me 7 hours longer than my best time. And it was a death march to get there. My first Lakeland 100 was the same. My feet were in bits and it was just agony, really. I was proud of the fact of finishing, but it wasn't pretty. And I started to wonder whether I was too old to do 100-mile races. And maybe I should just stick with the 50 miles and just, that was a bit more manageable. But I wasn't quite ready to give up. So in 2013, I entered the West Highland Way again. And I thought, right, I'm not going to worry about trying to get sub 20 in my better times. All I'm interested in is finishing well. I wanted to be able to enjoy the last 14 miles from Kinlochleven to the end and finish with a smile on my face. So I decided to do that. I really needed to start a lot easier than I had done in the past. And so the whole mantra, the whole race, I just kept thinking about the end and making sure that I walked all the hills. I kept my heart rate down. I kept my breathing down. And I got to Glencoe with about 20 odd miles to go. And I went through a bit of a bad time, a bit of a sticky time. And it was almost as if my mind was saying, you need to ease off. If you want to finish well, you can't push it too early. And I got through that. And then I got to Kinlochleven and I walked the last 14 miles in a similar time to what I'd done when I'd done my sub 20s. And that really encouraged me that I was able to still do these at my age and still enjoy them. And then from that point onwards, I really started to have this as my main goal, is to finish well. And it came to a head really, or came to probably one of my best races was the second Lakeland 100 that I did. And I was determined to try and get under 30 hours. That was my big goal. And I felt I was capable of doing that, but only if I paced it well, because the second half of the route is really hard, a lot of tough downhill runs. And if you're not able to run the second half in the downhills in the second half, then you're giving away time and positions. So that was, again, my real mantra. So I decided by then I was working to heart rate. And my friend Robert Osfield helped me to think about what heart rate I needed to have for a long race. And for a race like the Lakeland, I was going to take me 30 hours. He reckoned I needed to keep my heart rate under 125 particularly for the first 5 or 6 hours. And it was hard. It took a lot of discipline because as you come out of Kynaston, if you know the route, a big climb out of Kynaston. And to keep your heart rate that low, I really had to just take it really easy. And people were streaming past me and I thought, no, I'm just going to stick to this. And I got to the first checkpoint and I was 201st out of about 304, I think, started that year. And then I just kept going and I just kept my heart rate down. After about 5 hours, it's hard to get your heart rate above 125. So it's just what it is then. But by then I'd got into a good position. And I ended up finishing 60th in 29 hours, 36 minutes. And I was so pleased with myself that I was able to accomplish that. And I think that was the race that really just cemented to me that that's how I want to do ultras from now on, to try and start steady and try and finish well. And I've wrote down in the blog 5 points that I think are my top tips for finishing well. Now, I'm very aware that people like to do things differently. And I know some people love to go off hard and to run as hard as they can and hang on. And that's fine. But these are my tips for if you've had some tough races and you want to enjoy them a bit more and finish well, then these would be my 5 top tips. The first one would be to be realistic with your time goal. I think if you have a time goal which is beyond your ability, the temptation is to push too hard at the beginning, and that makes it worse. Secondly, is to start really comfortably. And if you think you're starting comfortably, go even more comfortable. There was a lady who did the West Highland Way a couple of years ago, and she decided to walk the first mile and let everybody go. And then she sort of ran her own race, and she ended up finishing under 23 hours and having a great time because she spent the whole day just catching people. So that was good. So start comfortably. walk the hills early on. Now, again, this wouldn't apply to people at the top end of the field, people like you, Eddie, who are going to win races. But for those of us down the field, I think if you can start as you mean to go on and walk the hills early on, that's really important. I remember doing a race in Wales, the 10 peaks in the Brecon Beacons, and it's a big climb up as you start. And there was people going past me that were breathing as if they were doing a hard 10K. And I'm thinking, there's 50 miles of this, there's 10 massive hills to climb, and you're breathing this hard in the first half an hour. You know, it's not good, I don't think, to put yourself under that much stress so early. The fourth point I wrote down was trust your strategy. And this is where it takes a lot of discipline, because you have to allow people to go streaming past you and knowing that if you get it right, then you'll see them again later on in the race. And then the final one is to enjoy that feeling of catching people over the second half of the race. If you've done it right and you've started steady and you looked after yourself, then you will be catching people. You'll still be slowing down, but you'll be slowing down less than others. And so it's a great feeling when you feel as though you're finding things hard, that you're actually catching people and going past them. So that would be my top 5 tips to finish well.
Wow, John, you sound like a coach with all that information. I might be employing you for my next race. And as you were talking, it was so funny because I wrote down discipline, and then you started talking about discipline. And I think this is where you've learned this. I was going to say old, you're wise. You are wise now, a wise ultra runner. But the men are so bad at this. I've done so many races, just like you said. And we've been going up the first hill, and I'm sort of trotting along, and there's guys going, and you think, oh, this isn't going to go to a happy place. Or so yeah, discipline. Everything you say, I totally agree with that discipline in that first half of the race, first 3/4 of the race. And I always say to people, patience as well. It's so hard because also you're going so slow. You want to get that first bit of the race done, don't you? You sort of like, I just want to get that first half done and be in the depths of the race. I don't want to be tootling around. But as you've shown, and there's some excellent graphs you've provided in your blog, which show that it works. It works if you are patient and disciplined in that first half of the race. And I think it's down to a lot of things. It's down to your experience that you're able to do this and trust the process that you've planned. But also, if you're going slower, you can eat and drink. You can absorb that fuel, and you're not burning through your blood glucose. Which, if you're out of breath, this is a top tip. If you're out of breath in that first 90 minutes, you've got about 90 minutes of blood glucose in your body. If you've eaten well the day before, so often if we go for a morning run, you'll know you can run for about 90 minutes without breakfast, and then you start feeling hungry, and you've run out of your blood glucose. But if you run really hard to start off with, you're burning through that blood glucose. So then you're going to have to go into your reserves much quicker. So the way that you've been doing it the past sort of couple of years, would it be? You're a shining example to the ultra world. And I would say a lot of people should take on board that advice, especially as we go back to racing. And we haven't raced for a long time, and everybody's super excited to be on that start line. But I think what we've seen is now with staggered starts, people are going off a bit slower and being a little bit more conservative, because you haven't got that first 10 miles of testosterone, ego-filled sweat fest.
So we thought for this week we'd have a competition again, and I'd love to hear other people's stories. I think one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts is interviewing people and talking to people and hearing people's stories. So for this week, we're going to have a little competition, and we're going to ask people to share their stories of how their race have gone. We'd love to hear those who got it right, in the sense of starting comfortably and finishing really well, and how that makes them feel. But we'd also quite like to hear the stories of where you got it wrong. And if I had time, I could share you some of those as well, where I've gone off far too quickly and I've hung on. I mean,
to be fair, probably 80% of the races I've done it wrong and gone off too fast and then grovelled in home, but managed to get a big enough deficit that my slowing down has been okay. But yeah, hearing most of us have got it wrong more than we've got it right, I'm sure.
Yeah. So again, our sponsors, Chia Charge, are providing a starter pack of their favorite bars, Chia Charge bars. So Eddie will put that on our Facebook page, which we've got over 1,000 people now on our Facebook page. So thank you for those that have joined. And
thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all our friends. And so basically, that'll be on there. And if you want to share your stories, and we'll pick the best one for a prize for next week.